Since this is the week before Thanksgiving, I ask you to think about all that our nation has to offer all of our citizens and to the world. So please join me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for this evening's invocation, which will be delivered by Reverend Rich Garner of the First United Methodist Church of Glendale.
Let us pray. O Holy One, who creates out of glory and grace, who challenges us to live fully and fruitfully and to use our blessing to bless others, we offer thanks for those who have been raised up to lead even as they serve. We ask that you continue to place before each of us and all of us together the dreams of others, that their needs would be met, not begrudgingly, but compassionately. May your vision of a world of justice and kindness, of care and concern, of healing and hope, become our call to build a community where everyone can gratefully live, free from terrifying fear, free from dehumanizing poverty, free from the darkness of ignorance, free from the despair of oppression. Remind us that as we labor together to plant seeds of love, we shall surely harvest a wealth of joy. May each day and every season be one of thanksgiving as we pray and live in the spirit of the holy. Amen.
Amen. Before we move on to the report of the city clerk, I just want to let everyone know that our mayor is just running a little late, and I'll conduct the meeting until his arrival. May we have the report, Mr. Clerk?
The agenda for the November 17, 2015 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, November 12, 2015 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
And what's next?
Next item under presentation appointments, 3A, is agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, November 24, 2015.
Ms. Beers?
Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council, for the November 24th and December 1st, 2015 Housing Authority and City Council meetings have both been canceled. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is scheduled for December the 8th.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Beers. And what is next, Mr. Clerk?
Next item is the Mayor's commendation for Altrusa of Glendale's 60th anniversary.
And who will be representing Altrusa?
We have some of the representatives here.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yes.
Yes, and we have a commendation. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes. Okay. I just want to thank you all for the opportunity that we have of being here this evening and for receiving this commendation. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Altrusa. Altrusa is an international nonprofit organization that strives to make our local communities better through leadership, partnership, and service. Our focus is on literacy and other local needs. Altrusa was founded in 1917 in Nashville, Tennessee, and one of our more prominent members was Eleanor Roosevelt. We have clubs around the world, including the United States, Puerto Rico, Canada, England, Bermuda, Ireland, India, Scotland, New Zealand, and Russia. We have our organization was originally founded as a service organization comprised of women, dedicated to leadership development and community service. Today, Altrusa International has an active membership that includes both men and women, and anyone interested in service and volunteerism may be invited to become an Altrusan. Altrusa International of Glendale was founded in 1955, and we're celebrating our 60th anniversary this year. Some of our projects include honoring middle students that demonstrate a desire to serve in their schools and community. We honor new citizens to the United States for their desire to become responsible participants in local affairs. We honor our veterans. We support our elementary schools in Glendale. We work with the homeless shelters, partner with the Essentia program, the Salvation Army, Glendale Memorial Hospital, the Campbell Center in Glendale, and Glendale Community College. Altrusa believes it's not enough to be good. Altrusans must be good for something. Each member must be doing a piece of work that is hers in a way that puts her in the front ranks of accomplishment. Altrusa is a practical idealism. Our service consists not in saying great things, but in daily, earnest practice of our principles. There's a flyer on the back table with our contact information if anyone is interested in contacting us. Thank you. Pat Zayas.
Microphone, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you, Zayas. And we have a commendation from Mayor Najarian, and I'm going to read the commendation into the record. And it states, Mayor's commendation presented to Altrusa International Glendale. Congratulations on the 60th anniversary of Altrusa International Glendale. We appreciate your company's investment and commitment to providing excellent service to the community on behalf of the City of Glendale. I wish you continued success, R. Najarian, Mayor. And I'd like Councilmember Arpetian to present the commendation.
Congratulations and thank you for
you
everything
very
you do for
much.
our community.
Thank you.
Wait. Do you want to?
And while they're doing that, I'll just say that I've attended a couple of your events, and they're always extremely well attended. I was there 2 years ago, I think you had a fundraiser that had a horse theme, and I donated a saddle and some other horse gear. I took it back at the end, by the way. I loaned it, let's say. But they had a lot of very dedicated women there, and I think what you do is really great for the community. And I would just suggest anyone in the community that's interested in helping foster any of those issues, particularly your emphasis on literacy,
Right.
to look you up and join.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And to the chagrin of Rotary and Kiwanis, they're not the only service clubs in Glendale.
That's right.
So thank you once again. Next item, please.
Next item, item 4, is the consent items, including minutes following our routine and may be acted upon by one motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have an item actually that's not on the agenda, but
right.
we want to do this today. And at the request of Councilmember Devine, she'd like to present this commendation from the mayor. And
Oh, do you want me to?
gladly have you read the commendation into the record and present it as well.
All right. Well, I was requested to procure this proclamation for Michelle Roberts. She's been the director of the YWCA for the last 4 years. 4.5, almost 5. And I just want to say before I read the commendation, Michelle, I want to let the community know, and I think they probably already know, that you came to the YW when we were in a bit of a turmoil, and you've turned it around. You have strengthened our domestic violence victims program. You have built and produced a great program for female vets, and the community is forever grateful that you passed our way on your journey. Okay, in recognition of your, I told her not to cry. Okay. You can tell we're friends. We've been friends for, 4.5 years now. Hate to lose you. In recognition of your exemplary leadership and commitment as the executive director of the YWCA in Glendale, I commend your hard work and dedication in working with the YWCA, members of the community, and various organizations. Your outstanding guidance has helped women and girls thrive within our community. Congratulations on a job well done. I thank you for representing Glendale and serving as a shining example to all. And on behalf of the City of Glendale, I wish you continued success, and it's signed R. Najarian, Mayor.
Just a quick comment from the board of the YWCA. I'm Eileen Blicker, one of the vice presidents, and T.C. Kim is another of the vice presidents. We have been lucky, I have been lucky in my 9 years on the board to now have worked with Michelle for 4.5. We are losing her, but she's had an amazing opportunity presented to her to go in another direction. She's going back to Mendocino, which is her hometown, and she will be the executive director of Mendocino Coastal Hospital Foundation. But she promises to come back in May for the YWCA's 90th birthday, and we wish her well in everything she does, and we're going to miss her.
I just want to thank the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, all the council members and city staff. You have all been so supportive, welcoming to me personally and helpful to me personally, but also really helping the YWCA out when, as you said, we've had our ups and downs like a lot of organizations do. And I feel like I'm leaving with a clear conscience, a good conscience, that the organization is strong, stable, and vital right now, and I know it will continue to thrive. So thank you all for your support and help. And please visit me on the Mendocino coast. It's not a bad place to visit. So thank you.
Thank you.
Photos. Oh. They want me.
From all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, next item, please. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, the next item 4 is a consent item, including minutes following our routine and may be acted upon by one motion. A member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed.
Any requests from council? None from the public? Will someone move the calendar?
The consent items?
Second.
Have the roll call, please. Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian, Mayor Pro Tem Sinanian.
Yes. As a request from Councilmember Garpetian, we're going to take item 8E out of order because Councilmember Garpetian has an obligation that he has to attend to, and we'll take that and then we'll come back to council comments.
Can we go to council comments?
If we go to
first,
council
really quick?
comments, then every council member will have to comment. That'll take a long time. I just want to make sure.
That's okay.
I'll be fast.
Just brief comments.
Okay.
Okay.
Briefly.
Just briefly. We'll start with you, Mr. Garpetian.
Yes,
council
thank you.
comments, Mr. Clerk.
Item 5 on the agenda is council and staff comments, please.
Yes, I'd like to inform the community that the Glendale Essentia Winter Shelter Program opened its door yesterday, and it will accommodate 80 people. It has 80 beds. It has a new location, 1219 Los Angeles Street in the city of Glendale. It's on first-come, first-served basis, so please arrive between 4:30 to 5 p.m. and no early lineups. And if you have any questions, you can contact 818-246-7900. And I'd like to thank the owners of the property to accommodate the city and our community to have this program this year, because we all know El Nino is coming, and we have this program has gotten extended a little bit, and this is a time that we need to help the people who are a little bit less fortunate than us. So I want to thank the owners of the property, and that will be my comments for tonight, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, ma'am, if I can, just because it punctuates that particular point, just very briefly, Mr. Garpetian is far too modest. Yes, the owners of the property helped make this happen, but we came to know the owners of the property because of Mr. Garpetian. Otherwise, this winter shelter would have been in Pacoima, and we would have seen the number of people served from Glendale diminish greatly. So to the extent that community collaboration, that network, that connection was made, it was made through Mr. Garpetian. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Kudos to Councilmember Garpetian. Ms. Friedman.
First, good job, council member. That's really an amazing thing that you've done. So thank you for that. Just two quick things. First, I want to nominate Richard Correll for the Audit Committee, and I will go through his qualifications next time we meet to introduce him to the community. And secondly, we are all, of course, aware and in shock of what's happened this week in France and of all of the terrible circumstances around the country with terrorism, with ISIS. And I wanted to first acknowledge that. And even if none of us are in this room are personally directly touched, I think that we are all very much touched in our heart with what's happened in France. So from one city to another, I wanted to acknowledge their suffering. And I also wanted to just say to the community that I hope that we use this as a springboard to express our personal and civic compassion rather than hatred, because I think what we need right now in the world is a lot more understanding and a lot more compassion and a lot more sympathy and pity towards people, particularly those fleeing that region of the world, rather than suspicion and hatred. Because if we respond with hatred in our hearts, then I think the terrorists really have won. So I know that the city of Glendale was published on a list of cities that are taking Syrian refugees. We have taken some Syrian refugees, not as a city in terms of us sitting here, but because we are the home to some relief agencies. And I think that's a very good thing, because these are people that are fleeing exactly the people who have committed the atrocities in France. And I hope that as a city we embrace them when they arrive and surround them with love and understanding and compassion.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman.
To say that.
Councilmember Freeman, I'm going to continue with that subject matter and call to everyone's attention that while the world's attention is concentrated on the horrible crimes that was committed in France, and there's so much resonance that there is about that terrorist act, just 2 days before that, 2 suicide bombers from the same group blew themselves up in a crowded section of Lebanon, and dozens of people were slain, were killed, cowardly, and yet no one talks about them, and as if their deaths don't matter. And just a week before Paris, the same cowards blew up a Russian plane flying from Egypt, as a result of which over 200 people died, and yet we don't seem to have compassion for them, or at least not as much as we have for the French, and I think that's wrong. And we need to combine our compassion for all those people, all these victims of the same terrorists, and keep in mind that this is happening to a lot more than just the French people, and we share their pain equally. And with that, I'll just move on to some of the items or some of the events that I was able to attend over the last 2 weeks. First, on the 5th of November, many of us, if not all of us, attended the first ever YMCA Glendale Gala fundraiser, which was an awesome event. It was held at the YMCA itself, at the basketball courts, and I think everyone who attended was very impressed at the transformation and the mood that the event created. It was very well attended, sort of I think the sign of things to come in terms of community support for the YMCA. And thank you for everyone who's supporting them. Their role in Glendale and in the lives of our youths is immense. On Friday of last week, I had the fortune of attending and being one of the judges at the first ever Glendale/Valley Economic Alliance Hackathon at the Glendale College. And no one was being taught how to hack computers. It was rather a tournament of 8 teams composed of high school seniors from around the area, not just Glendale, and also a group of students from Glendale College, which were distributed equally amongst each other. They didn't know each other, but the goal for them was to help Glendale attract more technology and entertainment business. And that was their task. And these students, over a period of roughly 4 hours, came up with amazing solutions. and amazing presentations, including websites. I don't understand how they design a website in a matter of hours, but they clearly know what they were doing. So I hope that becomes a tradition. I think the students loved it. Valley Economic Alliance was very much into it. We certainly were, and very impressive. And the prizes were also impressive. The winning teams are going to present their plans to a conference of business leaders and regional business leaders. So good stuff. On Saturday, some or many of us attended the 40th anniversary dinner for St. Mary's Armenian Apostolic Church. That's the church on Central. Probably the most attended church in the city. And that was a wonderful, wonderful event at the Glendale Hilton. On Saturday also, no, I believe this is on Sunday, Glendale Rose Float Association fundraiser took place. And we all know that the Rose Float is very dear to our hearts, but we're trying to find ways to make sure that the funding is there without an over-reliance on city funds. And I want to thank every and each one of you that attended, that contributed. No, Councilmember Devine was there. And did you have a few words that you wanted to say about that?
Eventually. Yeah.
Eventually. Okay, very well. And we're hoping that the community will put together the funds, making the Rose Float sustainable in the long term. Remember, that's the plan. That's the plan that we have for the long term. And finally, also on Sunday, my colleagues and I attended the dedication ceremony or reopening, grand opening of Homenetmen Glendale Chapter's North Campus, which is in Glendale. And that was a very moving event. The facility is very impressive, and it serves literally thousands and thousands of kids or young adults over a weekly period. And that's all I have. I don't know if I missed you and you wanted to say a few words.
Yeah, just a couple. I wanted
Thank
to.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience.
No problem. And I won't drone on about. I just wanted to remind to mention that we had attended the Glendale Rose Float Association fundraiser, and for all of those of you out there who want this float and who have had written letters and had come to City Council to ask us to support the float, now is the time for you to step up and help them raise funds. And if you'll go to their website at GlendaleRosefloat.com, and they can instruct you how to donate. You can donate financially or you can volunteer, but they need your help, and we want it to be a big success. So we need a lot of you out there to come and support this fantastic project. Getting there is half the fun is the theme of our float. Secondly, one of the events that I attended that hasn't been mentioned was the ribbon cutting at the Brand, which is the new development on Wilson, and there are like 235 units. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because we're always asked, how are the developments going? How are the rentals going? Are people renting them, or are they just standing there vacant? And I just wanted to let everyone know, just very quickly, that the Brio over in Colorado is 94% rented. The Elevate, which is on Broadway, is 97% rented. Lex on Orange is at 91% rented. And let's see, the Glendale Triangle project is at 52%. That's over by the hospital. And lastly, the Brand, which we just visited, is approximately 63% rented or leased. So the developments are doing well. We don't have to worry about a lot of vacancies. So let's all knock on wood and hope that continues. I also wanted to mention that last night at the Commission on the Status of Women, and this is a commission that's near and dear to my heart because that's from where I came, had a report from St. Mary's Mount St. Mary's College on women in Glendale. And there were a couple of very, very amazing statistics that they gave. And if you have an opportunity to go to your website, and watch that report, you will be fascinated. But a couple of things that I wanted to pass on about women and girls in Glendale very quickly. 92% of the girls in our schools, in the Glendale Unified School District, graduate. 92%. We have more women that are educated than men. More women have higher degrees than men. And the women in our community are making more money than men. And the interesting bottom line of this was that we are at the lead, or leading the way to closing the gender gap right here in Glendale in Los Angeles County. So I think that's fantastic. So if you get a chance, there are a lot more fabulous statistics that were given in this report, and there's more to come. So if you get an opportunity, and I've been assured that eventually this is going to end up on the website. So I'm so happy that Council created that commission, that they're able to continue this kind of work. I was proud to be on it, and I'm just really proud of our city and the fact that we are so close to gender equality, more so than other cities and counties in our state. So thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Devine. One last item. Today's meeting, at the request of the mayor, I should say, Mayor Najarian, today's meeting will be adjourned in the memory of Dr. John J. Jackson, and I'd like to read a few words about Reverend Pastor Jackson. Pastor John Jackson passed away unexpectedly on November 8, 2015, while joyously preparing for Sunday morning worship at the Glendale Church of the Brethren. He was pastor there for 8 years and built a vital, thriving congregation of Christians who became like family under his leadership. He was born in White Pigeon, Michigan, to Chuck Mary J. and Mary L. Adams Jackson. He became a Christian as a young man, finding God's call at First Baptist Church in downtown Lansing while attending community college and studying photography. He devoted his life to building church communities and ministering to members, believers and seekers of all kind. He served at Morrill and Sabetha, Clover Creek, Martinsburg, Pennsylvania, and Happy Corner, Clayton, Ohio Church of Brethren congregations before coming to Glendale. He's survived by his beloved wife, Christine, daughters and their husbands, Alyssa Jackson and Dan Kwan, and Wendy and Adrian Jackson Jones, and 2 grandsons, Simon and Teddy. His sister and brother, Mary and Charlie Jackson, also grieve. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to Heifer International at www.heifer, that's HEIFER.org. And we have a picture of Pastor Jackson. A funeral service and viewing will be held at the Glendale Church of the Brethren, located at 626 North Pacific Avenue, Glendale, 91203 on Wednesday, November 18, that's tomorrow, at 11 a.m. All who knew John are welcome. Burial will follow immediately at Forest Lawn, Glendale. Please wear or bring walking shoes, as there are hills at the cemetery. Everyone is invited to return to the church for lunch. Thank you. And we're going to take community event announcements next. There are only 2 cards, so I think we should take them so they don't have to wait for item 8E. And the first card is from Mara Kelly of Glendale Youth Orchestra. You have 3 minutes. Please state your names for the record.
Hi, my name is Mara Kelly. I'm president of the board of directors and an alum of the Glendale Youth Orchestra. I'm here with my board member, Rolinda Biesmeyer, who I think some of you know. I wanted to invite everyone to our 27th season opening concert on Sunday, November 22nd at the Alex Theater at 7 p.m. The concert will feature music of Beethoven, Schubert, Debussy, and our concertmaster playing the first movement of the Saint-Saëns' Third Violin Concerto. Her name is Anna Gong, and she is the daughter of Bing Wong, who's the associate concertmaster of the LA Phil. This season, we are very proud to have a handful of children from the LA Phils, their children in our orchestra. We are also celebrating our 20th anniversary of performing at the Alex Theater, who, as you know, is celebrating their 90th anniversary as well. Tickets are $12.50. Students and seniors, $10 at the door. We'll be having a silent auction to raise funds for our scholarship program. We turn no one away based on their family's financial ability or inability to pay tuition, and half of our orchestra goes to Glendale Unified School District, and we give all public schools free tickets to our concerts. So check out our website, glendaleyouthorchestra.com, and there are YouTube clips, and you can hear, as Congressman Adam Schiff said, they do not sound like kids, and if you closed your eyes, you'd have no idea that there are members as young as 9 and as old as 25. So I encourage you all to come. Thank you.
Sorry, we have Matt Ganji and Roberta Medford next.
Hello, I'm Roberta Medford.
And I'm Matt Ganji.
Okay, we are representing Glendale Beautiful, and we're here to announce 2 events. The first is the Fiesta de los Luminarias, and that's a picture from a previous year. That will be held at the historic Casa Adobe de San Rafael, which, as you know, Glendale Beautiful works in partnership with the city and provides the docents and tries to promote and do programming. The Luminarias is the prime example. It is at 1330 Dorothy Drive in Glendale. The evenings will be the same as always, second weekend in December. So it'll be Friday, December 11th, open house from 11 to 8, and Saturday, December 12th, open house, I'm sorry, not 11 to 8, open house from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, December 12th, open house from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then on Saturday afternoon from 2 to 4, there is a children's piñata party at the Casa also. And Matt will tell you a little bit about the programming those evenings at the Casa.
Yeah, for the sound, we have a whole bunch of students performing on the 11th, Friday the 11th. Jerry Keeling and her piano students are going to be giving a recital. And then on Saturday the 12th, the Hoover High School Choir is going to be performing. And then we have one other program on the 3rd. We have
more immediately, our December meeting, we're going out into experimental territory, and we're holding an evening meeting instead of a daytime meeting. We don't have a visual for it, but so we'll try to get back and have a visual, and it's going to be on the city website soon. It's going to be the Winter Cabaret, and it will be at the Adult Recreation Center on Thursday, December 3rd, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And as you know, parking is available in the marketplace structure, and you may call Sharon Wiseman at 818-248-4967 for more information. And again, Matt's going to tell you about the programming for that evening.
And for the sound, we're going to stick with some students. The Daily High School Guitar Academy will be doing a performance, a recital. And we're also going to have Lael Neal, who's a great local singer-songwriter, do a performance as well. So hopefully everyone can make it out to those Glendale Beautiful events.
And please watch the city events calendar and website for our flyers and the reminders of this. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor's back.
Thank you. I apologize for being tardy. Thank you for running the meeting, Mr. Sinanian. Do we have any other cards? No other cards then. The next item has been requested to come out of order, and that is 8E. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So please read 8E, Mr. Clerk.
Here, welcome back. And before I read 8E into the record, I would like to inform anyone who's in the council chambers for item 9A under hearings, Director of Community Development regarding Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act public hearing for California Public Finance Authority proposed issuance of approximately $5 million tax-exempt revenue bonds in support of Maple Apartments, a Glendale affordable housing residential facility. That this item, this public hearing, is being continued. It will not be heard this evening. there anything
Thank
else
you.
that the city attorney would like to?
Actually, sir, we'd request that would just be pulled from the calendar altogether.
Okay.
With that, item 80 is Director of Finance regarding first quarter financial report. E1 is a motion to note and file the finance status of the fiscal year 2014-15 year-end closeout and the fiscal year 2015-16 first quarter financial report for the period ended September 30th, 2015. 2 is a resolution appropriating $546,749, for which $529,749 is a net increase to fund the first quarter budget adjustment to the adopted fiscal year 2015-16 budget.
Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. As is our custom, we have the quarterly financial report for you, where we will summarize at this point our year-end, give you an update as to where we are now, and look forward to the rest of the year. As I turn this over to Mr. Elliott, I can tell you for the first time in a little while that we have reason to be cautiously optimistic. The very conservative practices of the City Council to ensure that our ongoing costs meet our ongoing resources is paying dividends at this point. It isn't as though the times are fat and happy, but certainly to the extent that we have made the necessary cuts, that we've held the line based on the Council's direction repeatedly, we have built for ourselves the defensible space within the budget to ensure that not only can we manage the organization, but we can continue to offer an exceptional level of customer service to our residents and businesses. Now, that is all predicated on the snapshot that we have here today. God willing and the river don't rise, we should be able to sustain the level of effort that we've put forward. And even as you've seen in some areas like our One Glendale after-school sports program, augmentation of some of our staffing levels and some of our various departments where we know that the public is needing and wanting more service, to the extent that the resources, the revenue streams that we have cultivated remain stable. And so with that, let me turn it over to Mr. Elliott. He will walk you through the first quarter report, and certainly we can answer any questions that the council might have. Bob?
Thanks, Scott. So as we normally do, we'll hit on our fiscal year 14-15 preliminary results. We're still in the middle of our audit, and we'll bring you the CAFR in December. But I think our numbers are pretty good at this point. We'll walk you through what our estimated fund balance is, and then head on into this current first quarter 15-16 results, and then touch on the organizational profile. So 14-15 results was actually a fairly good year in the general fund. We had revenues were $3.9 million more than we anticipated. Primarily that was from building permits and planning permits, basically from all the development that has gone on. Expenditures were $5.1 million less than anticipated. We had included in the final budget an anticipated $2.1 million use of fund balance, so we actually ended up with a net increase of $6.9 million, and I'll show you that on a chart in a minute.
And so here again is an example where we've seen an increase in revenue, but to the extent that some of this revenue, unanticipated revenue, or unrepeatable revenue, I guess is a better way to characterize it, is not being requested or recommended to be channeled back into ongoing programs and appropriations, because we do believe in this particular case, as Bob has indicated, the increase in development activity that has brought in additional revenue into the organization, that is not going to be something that's sustained. As Councilmember Devine had indicated in her comments, it is a reflection of a lot of the development that has come to pass. And as that development begins to ebb in the normal cycle of investment, we want to make sure that we stay poised to deliver service but not become overstaffed, and that we are matching staffing with the needs. Sorry, Bob.
So with the operating surplus of 6.9, as you recall, we had used fund balance one time for $5 million for the library and $2 million for the data center. So we take that out. So we actually had a net decrease of $100,000. But from a recurring operating standpoint, it was a very good year. Our projected reserve percentage is well over 35 at 37.8. If you recall, our floor is 30% with a target of 35. So what we've tried to do here, and this is a new way to look at this, and we're trying to show where our revised budget is in terms of the iterations that happened as we move through the budget year, with what the impact is on our fund balance. So we started fund balance at 37.9. We had our one-time use of revenue, the $7 million here. This is our revenue and adjustments, and this is all on a budgetary basis. So we anticipated $178 million in revenues against $180 million in expenditures. Again, that was the $2.1 million in anticipated fund balance, use of fund balance. That would have left us at 32.6 had our budget, and we hit that. So what actually happened was, again, we start out here using the $7 million in one-time fund balance. We had revenues at $182 million, quite a bit different from the 107, even the inflated 178 that we adjusted the revenues up to. Our expenditures, we had again budgeted this $180 million. We came in at $175 million. That's what led to the $6.9 million operating surplus for the year. Again, that leaves us with a projected fund balance of about 37.8%, and obviously higher than the 35% that is our target, or the 30% target with the, or 35% target with the floor of 30%.
And again, this is a snapshot in time at this first quarter. As the council is aware, when we move towards the unblending of the OPEB liability, we anticipate using some of that excess revenue to buy out basically $200 million worth of liability for what will ultimately amount to a little more, hopefully a little more than $1 million worth of cost outlay. And so you're seeing that we are making good strategic investments in taking out chunks of liability, replacing them on a prepaid basis through programs like Retiree Health Savings Account and Retirement Health Savings Plans, as opposed to the pay-as-you-go OPEB promise that had previously existed before the council took that difficult action earlier this year.
So walking through the how we ended the year with our revenues, and these are all the different categories. Obviously, property tax is our largest revenue source, and you can see where that came in at the $46.7 million. Our next largest is the 34.1 on the sales tax. That has been growing nicely through the various retail establishments. Our utility users tax, as you well know, it makes up about 15% of our revenue stream. That is what is currently under challenge, as you know, and so that would take a large chunk out of the general fund if that were to go away, and subsequent cuts would have to pursue if that were to leave. Our occupancy tax and some of our other license and permits, obviously the 128%, that was the big increase in development, so those were quite a bit over our estimates. The three on the revenue from other agencies, we had some additional grant money that brought in some SB 90 reimbursements. Those are reimbursements from the state. We had some additional monies from fire and police for special events. Interest revenue is actually up a bit, higher than our estimates, which is a good thing. So overall, again, our final revenue for the year was $182 million in the general fund, which was a good year from a revenue standpoint.
And I think what you see here is that our revenue base, again, Glendale being historically a bedroom community, is with a very limited but very dynamic commercial core, is the property tax base that you see there at the $46.8 million, growing as the value of real estate holdings continues to grow. But again, we are a low-tax city. Only 13.7 cents on the dollar comes to the city of Glendale as a taxing entity. The rest goes school district, county, and then back ultimately through the state of California. As a result of that, you saw historically revenue streams on top of sales tax, like the utility user tax, that was approved or ratified, reaffirmed by the voters, if you will, back as recently as 2009 to the tune of 67% of the voting public. You also saw the charges for service and the transfers in. All of this is a reflection of what Glendale historically has received vis-a-vis the property tax. So to blow large holes in the side of the ship of the municipality is very difficult to overcome in any other way other than the revenue streams that you see that have evolved over generations.
Moving on to expenditures within the general fund, we break it down by departments and how each department performed during the year. Obviously, 100%. Some exceeded 100%, but those were for reasons. And for example, in the police department, they had an increase in overtime due to vacancies and injuries. But generally speaking, on whole, the entire fund was 97.1% spent. With $175 million.
And I think it's worth noting here that at least in the fire department, what you see is a realistic appropriation of funding for their staffing and overtime. And as council directed, they needed to come in on or under budget, and indeed Chief Fish has been able to do that with his leadership team. On the flip side, the police department is responding to any number of issues that are existing beyond your control, certainly beyond the police department's control. You are seeing that increase in property crimes and Part 2 crimes as a reflection of non-revocable parole and the reclassification of certain felonies into misdemeanors. That is creating a need for more police patrols, which then translates into increased overtime for those patrol divisions. So you're seeing, on the one hand, the ability to get hold of the organization vis-a-vis fire, and then through police, you're seeing the impact of environmental factors, state law changes, as they impact our local community and our ability to provide levels of service. That ultimately has an impact on the general fund because those two departments make up 2/3 of the general fund, as they would in any general full-service city.
Moving on to the first quarter of 15-16. Again, the same snapshot, excuse me, with our revenues. And again, as we normally go through in the first quarter, our revenue stream comes in big chunks, especially for property tax. That's why you see very little. We've gotten probably some delinquencies. We don't get the majority of that. We get a 40% chunk in December and another and again in April. So it ebbs and flows on our percentages. We were the exact same amount a year ago at this point in time. So we're not too concerned. Everything seems to be looking fine on the revenue front. Turning to expenditures again, if you straight line the departments, you would assume that they would be about 25% expended. Some are a little bit higher than that. Obviously, Parks and Rec has more activities in the summer months, so they tend to be a little bit higher than the 25%. Fire had extra activity this summer with some fires and whatnot. So
those strike teams are indeed reimbursable. Keep in mind.
Correct. So overall, we're right at 25%. We were actually lower than we were at this point last year. We were 25.8. So we're actually right on the mark in terms of where we are for the first quarter. So what does that, our projection in, what does the fund balance look like? So again, this is kind of the walkthrough, assuming we adopt the adjustments that we have and assuming we have the net surplus. We have some carryovers that we've moved into this year, some other adjustments that have already been taken up by City Council. We have some pending tonight, the $216,000. If we factor all those in, our fund balance would drop to about 35.9%. Still a healthy fund balance at $65 million, $65.6 million. As we always do, we show you where we are in the major funds on our cash. General fund has $61 million in cash, and we've paid a lot of attention to GWP over the years, last several years with the rate increases. I can truly say the electric fund is healthy again from a cash standpoint. The water fund still has a little work to go. The operating cash is still negative, but if you recall, this was $23 million negative a couple of years ago. So we've obviously made a lot of progress in the water fund, and you know, obviously keeping costs down and with the rate increases that council enacted. So overall, citywide, our cash total as of the first quarter is $588 million. Again, that does include bond cash here for GWP, both in electric and water. This year, or this time last year, we were about $488 million. So we've got about $100 million more in cash this year. So looking at the general fund forecast, we redo this constantly with what we know. We build in our assumptions in terms of what our resources are. We're fairly conservative on the resources. We plug in what we know in terms of PERS and the increases that PERS has given us, where we're going to be in the out years. We've plugged in all those increases. The point being, we want to try and always keep our recurring revenues covering our recurring costs. This does include the loan repayment from the state for the redevelopment agency. We're fairly confident that we will get that. You'll notice down here we had the OPEB previously. Now we've relabeled that RHSP as a placeholder for the out years for additional RHSP contributions if we choose to go that way. So the good news is we still have a projected surplus for this year. Moving forward, we have slight deficits projected for the next couple of years, but then moving positive towards the out years. Still a little tentative in these upcoming years, but obviously going well in the out years. And we redo this every quarter, so we have a pretty good idea where we're going to be, and we can dial things down or turn things up on the revenues if necessary. As we do
I'm sorry, Bob. Can you... Way at the bottom, there's that little double asterisk. What does that say?
Does not include the PERS discount rate increase.
Which are being changed, right? I mean, didn't they just come out and say we're not able to meet our target and the cities are going to have to contribute more?
Good, yes, sir. It's good news and bad news. We have been preparing for a more significant increase from PERS based on the reports that are coming out as of today, as recently as today. PERS, I think, is recognizing that they have to be more judicious in the manner in which they make those increases to take it from a discount rate of 7.5 to 6.5. And so I think what you'll see is as we program whatever the increase might be from PERS, and it would be a fraction of what we had been anticipating on top of what you see here, it will become much more affordable to the city of Glendale. So our goal, as you recall, has been to contain that PERS cost in the mid to low teens and never really let it get into that danger zone where the Stocktons and San Jose's and San Diego's found themselves. So far, we've been able to do that, and if you recall from our budget presentation, even in our darkest year of 18-19 and 19-20, we never get into that danger zone because we've been able to effectively reduce payroll and hopefully do it in a way that doesn't too negatively impact the service level. So this is just letting everybody know, full disclosure, that this doesn't include the latest round of PERS increases, but again, the takeaway is that PERS is stating that they are going to take a much more measured approach than I think what they originally were letting folks believe.
If they do change the discount, they've said it will be anywhere from 4 years at the worst to 20 years, of which they would ratchet down from 7.5 to 6.5, depending on investment earnings. Bear in mind that their recent 10-year average is 7.2%, so they're not too far off the mark. So they may only ratchet it down a little bit, but it all depends. They've had some years returns were close to 20%. What has really hurt them was the 1 year where they were 23% negative, and that was the 2008 when we had the recession. So they've done a pretty good job. They pulled out a lot of their more risky investments in terms of real estate and some of the REITs they were in. But reality is they probably need to dial down the discount rate. But it depends on where they land on that. So it's still kind of up in the air.
But I guess my bottom line is on this, that even with a reduction of that discount rate, that we're still okay in those out years?
Well, what we know right now and what we've projected in the out years, we only have rates for 3 years. We've taken a rather worst-case scenario on where our rates will increase. For example, right now we're at 34% on safety. We've plugged in kind of worst-case scenario at 48% for safety in the out years. We don't know what it's going to be, but every year as we get information, we'll continuously update that.
So you're right. Those out years, we may very well be okay with these estimates, but trying to be as conservative yet realistic. We don't want to sandbag anybody as we possibly can be. I think the trend continues to hold that by 18, 19, 19, 20, we are able to see the separation between our ongoing resources and our flatlining cost.
Okay, thank you.
To our organizational profile, we update this again every quarter. Our latest Department of Finance estimate on our on our population, we've grown up to almost 200,000 at 199,000. Our total employees in the city have decreased from last year at 1,584 down to the 1,566. General fund is at 1,882. Our total budget, obviously, this year was $797 million. General fund being 182 of that. So, doing the numbers, residents served has remained pretty constant from 124 to 127. Residents served per FTE in the general fund is 226. Our per capita budget has decreased a little bit to 4,000 and 918 in the general fund. So, in terms of the organization and the categories of what we look at in terms of expenditures, public safety has remained pretty constant in terms of dollars. It's gone up a little bit in terms of percentage of our total budget. Public works, utilities, and transit, that's a big bucket. And you'll notice a fairly big decrease of about $70 million. If you recall, we had some bond money from last year. We appropriated that in the utilities, and we also moved the transit portion from public works over to community development. That's why you see an increase in community development, so it's kind of skewed the percentages a little bit. Quality life, that's remained fairly constant at just around 5%, and then our internal costs have gone up a little bit, primarily from the Tier 2 ERP project where that got appropriated this year, and that's why that bumped that up a little bit to 13.5%. So looking at all funds and what our total salary and benefits are, you can see the difference from 14-15 to 15-16. A little bit of an increase, but that takes into account MOUs and other increases, primarily medical. We factor in a 10% increase for medical. So 3.6 is not too bad. Our overall operating costs, 4.1% increase. Our magic number of personnel versus operating costs at 33%. Our target, if you recall, is 35%. We're actually reduced it down and holding below 35%. Again, our employee count is at 1,566, down from 1,584. If you remember, when we presented this originally, our employee count in, I believe, 2006 was 1,998 employees. So down over 400 employees.
But again, I think it's worth noting this is how we keep score. The council has adopted these soft salary caps, if you will, of the 35%. You'll see it in the general fund. We're not there where we want to be in the next slide to hold to a line of 75%. We're at 78.7. But I think what you'll see is as revenue continues to grow and you'll see our flatlining costs in the out years, we'll be able to get to that magical 75%.
Yeah, as Scott alluded to, this is our general fund forecast numbers on the comparative for salary and benefits and where we were this year versus last year. Breaking into looking at the M&O and the internal service fund charges, a slight decrease. Capital outlay obviously has remained fairly constant. And just a mild increase in total appropriations from the 176 to the 180.8. So again, the personnel versus M&O, our target is 75%. We're actually increased this year up to 78.7. So there's a little work to be done there. The organizational profile, when we look at the all funds in terms of management versus non-management and what the total salaries are for management versus non-management, the ratio, our target is 25%. We've held it pretty constant. Below 20, we're now 19.4% in terms of management versus non-management salary
And the idea being that we want to make sure that we keep a streamlined yet reasonable span of control, and I think we're able to hold that still, even as we try to right-size this organization.
And with that, if you have any questions, we can...
Okay. Other questions from council? I do have a. Would you like to? I do have a card from Mike Mohill. 3 minutes, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Najarian, and council members. My name is Mike Mohill. Our finance director, Bob Elliott, mentioned CalPERS. One thing he didn't tell us, that they're only reporting that 74% they're funded. 74% of their obligation is funded. That means where are they going to get the money? They're talking about, oh, we're going to have better investments. I've been hearing that for the last 15, 20 years. They go sour most of the time. And what they do is they count on the struggling families of Glendale, the people who are on Social Security, the people who are on disability, the people who are collecting unemployment to pay more money in fees and taxes. Now you say, not a big deal. But you know what? If you're unemployed and you get your GWP bill and that money gets transferred from the GWP to the pockets of our union workforce, that's the problem. We're paying police and firemen 90% of their last year's salary as their pension for life, and they retired age 50 or 55. And they get a second job called double dipping. CalPERS is out of control. We need to leave this bankrupt, corrupt organization. They've had some of their people put in jail for conflicts of interest. Don't you all remember reading about that too? They talk about, oh, we're going to reduce the investment goal to 6.5. So what? They're still 74% unfunded. Where are they going to get that money? From you and me. And I'm tired. My wife tells me I have to use less water, take less showers, turn off electricity. We're on Social Security, like a lot of people. We're not a government employee. CalPERS needs to be terminated and put all our future employees on Social Security and a 401k plan. We need to pay this corrupt organization $1.4 billion and get rid of them. We have two options, either sell our assets or float a bond. The bond is probably the better way to go. Otherwise, the way it's going right now, ladies and gentlemen, we and our children and grandchildren will continue paying these CalPERS employees. We cannot afford them. Thank you.
Mr. Mohill. Any questions from council? Let me just, Ms. Devine?
No, I was just going to ask Mr. Ochoa, how much, again, would it cost us to get out of CalPERS?
As actually is indicated by Mr. Mohill, well more than $1 billion on a bond that you would have to somehow levy on the very taxpayers that he is asking that you somehow not levy any more burden upon, all the while you pursue a pre-funded 401k style program. So at the end of the day, the double dip would actually occur with the city in terms of having to fund a burden that you really couldn't fund. Plus, in order to stay competitive, be able to do a 401k matching program like the all-knowing, omniscient private sector. The problem with that, however, is that at the end of the day, we are a business, but we are the business of government. We have to pick one or the other. And at this point, you couldn't even, under the law, we believe, move in a direction that Mr. Mohill is advocating. As you saw in the Stockton case, while the judge said, well, you might be able to break the contract, that very same bankruptcy judge, with all of the rationale to move in that direction, opted not to. for lots of very good legal reasons. At the end of the day, I think what you have to stand back, and one of the things Mr. Molo said that was somewhat interesting, is that the investment portfolio of PERS is so very bankrupt as it was 15 and 20 years ago. 15 and 20 years ago, your PERS bill was 0%. You were superfunded as PERS was superfunded because they rode on the tide of the markets. Now, shame on PERS, shame on every public agency for not continuing to just maintain a conservative standpoint, a conservative approach to the value of those investments. But if PERS is to blame, then the entire financial infrastructure of this entire nation, if not the world, is to blame. Where everything came crushing down was in a recession in 2008, 2009 that saw investment houses, the banks that were too big to fail, the insurance companies that were too big to fail, none of whom, last I checked, are part of PERS. Yet they too can make those kinds of mistakes. And so to the extent that you remain in PERS because that is the most affordable, most conservative, most reasonable thing to do, makes the most amount of sense to you as policymakers, I would venture a guess. The second part, because he says this repeatedly, is that somehow you are going to raise taxes on your residents. Under Prop 13 in the state of California, you, the five of you, cannot raise taxes. You have not raised taxes. Only the public, the voting public, can raise those taxes. In terms of fees, Prop 218, Prop 26, we have so regulated what is a fee, what is a tax, what is a user charge, what is an assessment district, that the silver lining of all of this ballot box governance is that we know very clearly what is and what is not a tax. And you have not increased those taxes. You absolutely have not. So you can't have it both ways. So, you know, and you'll hear this in a bit coming forward to say, well, let's blow a hole in the side of this organization to the tune of 15% of the revenue stream vis-a-vis the utility user tax, if only to prove an ideological point and not really give much consideration to the ultimate impact of the folks that live here, that depend on those services, is the height of your responsibility. If you were given the rules in terms of this is a tax, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and the city council and previous city councils have acted on that reality, well, then so be it. And I think what you've seen in this budget report, and you've seen in all of our budget reports over the last several years, is an absolute commitment to live within our resources. As Mr. Elliott indicated, as the mayor is quite fond of saying, not through pride, but only through solemn recognition. We have dropped the size of this organization by 23, 24% on an ongoing basis, yet still maintain a high level of service. If you go back to our citizen satisfaction survey, which we'll be renewing this February and redoing on the 4-year basis, our residents are 80 and 90% either satisfied or very satisfied with the level of service that we're providing. That says something about the expectation that you have, that you put upon your executive team, and certainly the pride of our employees. And so I understand folks wanting to make soapbox speeches, and I suppose I am too, but I'm sorry, to the extent that we define democracy as asking the same question again and again until we get the answer we like, I think that is more than just a bit disingenuous.
Can you elaborate, Mr. Ochoa? No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Sorry, I asked.
Okay, but I would like you to please, so there's two parts to our item today. One is a motion to note and file. Can you please bring us back to the resolution and explain, just highlight again the appropriation we're making?
Yes, sir.
And then increase of 500 and almost 30,000.
Very quickly, in your staff report, you have the requisite resolutions. What we are looking to do in a couple of different departments. In the community development department, right now, the workload on community development resembles very much the analogy we use is the python that swallowed the pig. And that pig is the amount of development activity that is being processed, as well as the ongoing organic amount of work that goes through from homeowners and businesses looking to do permitted projects. And so what we aspire to do through Phil Lanzafame's ascension into the director role of community development is take economic development dollars, not general fund dollars, take economic development fund dollars and augment the staffing levels primarily through hourly employees such that we will be able to matriculate the most productive of those employees over the intermediate term into the organization on a full-time basis as existing full-time equivalent employees attrition out of the organization. And so the idea is not just to add a bunch of staff on an ongoing basis to handle what is probably a temporary increase in the amount of work, but rather to try to match the amount of employee resource to the amount of work in a way that we can increase and decrease the capacity of the staff to match that of the economy. That's the community development, economic development structure that's embedded in your staff report, and certainly Mr. Lanzafame can address that. The item on the library speaks back to the ongoing reorganization of the city overall, as well as the Department of Library, Arts, and Culture. We had a scenario previously where we had 3 administrators, which are upper management employees. The reorganization plan brought forward by Director Cindy Cleary was to effectively eliminate those 3 upper management positions and replace them with 2 upper management positions, being 2 deputies. We have 1 deputy position that we basically would reclassify from an existing position, and then what we are asking for tonight is to effectively recruit from the outside as an open recruitment versus moving up an existing employee spot and then eliminating that spot once that person did move up into would that person have moved up into that deputy spot. Since that does not appear to be likely, and I'm not a big advocate of promoting people to the highest level of their own incompetence, that Peter principle, I think we are best served in creating a separate deputy spot, recruiting from the outside, and that is reflected in the library item before you.
Okay, and the others are relatively minor.
Those are small contractual items,
okay.
Sir.
All right, very good. Thank you. Can we take these together, Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
One comment?
Yes, Ms. Friedman.
I just wanted to say, it was a very comprehensive report, a lot of numbers. So just to distill it down for those following along, we're having a good year. I started in 2009, which is when the recession started, and I saw several years of deficits and red numbers up there, and a lot of painful decisions having to be made in terms of downsizing the city departments, dealing with pensions and going through all of those difficult years. And it's nice to sit up here and see a year where we're in surplus, where we're putting more money into our reserves, where we have really downsized the organization, I would say right-sized the organization to a level where we're still, I believe, providing excellent services to the residents, but doing so in a more efficient manner. And I'm very glad to see that we're looking to beef up the library department, because that's certainly a department that is extremely well used by the public and extremely important. So if we're going to be putting money someplace, it's good to see it going into that particular department, and they're doing a great job. And now that they've assumed also arts and culture and are doing more with the arts in the community, besides the traditional library services, I hope that this hire will help to really beef the department out and make them even more valuable to the community. So I wanted to thank the staff for a very good presentation and for the years of work getting us here. It's all very, very good news. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion that, I'm sorry, Mr. City Attorney, you said we could do both?
As long as there's no objection from any of the council members, Mr. Mayor.
If there's no objection, would someone like to move 8E 1 and 2?
I'll move the items.
There's a second.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Garpetian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Let's move back in order. Yes.
I want to apologize, but I have to be excused, and then I have to leave. And I'll leave the easy part to you guys, so. Thank you very much.
8A, please.
8A is City Clerk and City Attorney regarding City Clerk's certification of the sufficiency of signatures on Utility Users Tax Repeal Initiative measure and request for further direction from City Council. 81 is a motion to receive, file, and accept certificates of sufficiency of initiative petition from City Clerk. And item 8A2 is a motion directing City Manager to prepare a report under Elections Code Section 9212 analyzing the fiscal and other impacts of the UT repeal measure.
Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, as you know, and as Mr. Ochoa referred to earlier, the city did receive a petition to repeal the UUT in April of this year, which started the clock rolling for the proponents of the measure to seek the requisite number of signatures to place that measure on the ballot. Those signatures were submitted on October 16th of this year, at which time the signatures were verified by the county registrar, and the first request for tonight is to certify or accept the city clerk's certification of those signatures. The requisite number of signatures is based on the number of voters that voted for governor in the last gubernatorial election, and it's based on 5% of that number because it is a repeal of a tax. So under Prop 218, the percentage is 5%. So the requisite number of signatures was 1,366. Over 2,000 signatures were submitted, and approximately 1,500 were verified by the county registrar. So the matter does qualify for the ballot. So at this time, the council would then generally have three options. One is to adopt the ordinance without alteration. The second option is to place it on a general election ballot or another election, and I'll get into the nuances of that in a little bit if you'd like. And the third option, which we're recommending, is to direct the city manager and his staff to prepare a report under Elections Code Section 9212, which would analyze the fiscal impacts of the measure and other impacts of the measure. As Mr. Ochoa noted, it's about a $20 million hit to our $27 million hit to our general fund, which represents approximately 15% of the city's general fund. And so the report would analyze the metrics of addressing that revenue loss through our budget process, and it can take into account the actual, not only the fiscal impact, but what the actual impacts of those cuts would be to city services. So the timing for that report we're anticipating would come back before you on December 8th. And at that time, the council could choose to place the matter on the ballot. Because it got the 5%, it hit the 5% threshold. At a minimum, the council would have to put that measure on the ballot at the city's general municipal election of April 2017, but would also have the option to place it on a special election ballot or to place it on one of the statewide general election ballots in 2016. So that part is more food for thought for council, because you don't have to make that decision or have a discussion about that tonight. That'll come back before you on December 8th. But with that, I'll submit the matter to the council if there are any questions.
Do we have any discretion in accepting the certificate of sufficiency?
In my opinion, no. They met the requisite number. And again, the county goes through a pretty substantive, rigorous review of the signatures to make sure they are indeed signed by the person who claims to have been signing it. And there were a significant number of signatures that were invalidated as it went through that process, but they did meet the threshold. You had the double whammy of the fact that it was, because it's Prop 218, the threshold is usually 10%, it's 5%. In addition, as you know, the governor's election in 2014 was a historic low voter turnout, and that in turn affects the number of signatures required for this matter.
Are there any questions from council on this? So the second part of that motion is to direct you to prepare the report under Elections Code 9212.
To direct the staff to do that, yes, sir.
I don't see, as we have much choice, would someone like to move 8A, 1 and 2?
So move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Garpetian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. 8B, please.
8B is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding Silmar Services Agreement and Balancing Authority Area Services Agreement with the City of Los Angeles. B1 is a motion authorizing the City Manager as designee to execute a long-term Silmar Services Agreement with the City of Los Angeles to provide the City of Glendale with 150 megawatts of firm electrical transmission capacity through the Silmar switching station. And 2 is a motion authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute a balancing authority area service agreement with the City of Los Angeles for electric balancing services.
Thank you. Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. Just very briefly, and certainly Mr. Zern can answer any specific questions that the council may have. These two items under item B are reflections of our sometimes tenuous strategic partnership with LADWP. We exist in a grid that is largely dominated by them in this region, and as such, we do need to negotiate certain terms from time to time. These two terms are critically important to the means by which we deliver electricity to Glendale and from our receiving stations to our customer base. The council obviously is familiar with these items as they had been portions of closed session agendas in the past, but certainly I would turn it over to Mr. Zern to give you a very brief overview just for your own edification.
Mr. Zern.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and I'm actually going to defer to Ms. Godinez because, as you all know, she, along with Mr. Boyd and Mr. Peters, have done a tremendous job in negotiating these. So I'll let her quickly go over it. As Mr. Ochoa indicated, you're all pretty familiar with this as a result of updates and the fact that we had legal action that was pending. I think that's the good news. The legal action didn't need to go forward. And the most recent development is, if you recall, there was interveners that were allowed to get involved in this, outsiders who could have essentially made this a little bit more difficult. All interveners have withdrawn. So we got that message yesterday. So this is clean. It's been approved by LA, approved by Burbank last night. And tonight will be our turn, and we can put this to rest. But I'll let Ms. Godinez give you the details.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, so what you have before you are two agreements for your consideration and hopefully approval. One is a Sylmar Services Agreement that allows Glendale to transact across what's called the Sylmar Substation, and it opens up a lot of transmission access to us, which we didn't have previously. It's 115 megawatts of transmission access. It allows us to go back and forth through the Sylmar substation, where previously LA had told us that they own it and wouldn't allow us to do so, which very much limited our transmission rights. The second agreement is what's called the Balancing Authority Area Services Agreement. This agreement is required in order to just under the regulations to balance the energy loads to make sure that we have reliability. And LA is what's called our Balancing Authority Area. We had a very contentious and lengthy negotiation with LA over what the appropriate pricing should be, what the penalties should be if we deviated from our levels. We've now been able to work that out, and we're very pleased to bring to you two agreements for your approval, hopefully. And if you have any questions about the particulars of the agreement, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions on this? Highly recommended by Mr. Zern.
Absolutely,
to
Mr.
put
Mayor.
this issue to rest.
Absolutely. And again, I know I have said this, but I can't say it enough. The tremendous work done by Ms. Godinez, Mr. Boyd, and Mr. Peters, the three individuals that we sent to the table when there were at least triple that number on the other agencies. They did fantastic work.
Good job. Good job, team.
I'd just like to commend them as well, because I know they've been going through this for a while.
Great. Would you like to make the motion?
I will. I'll move the item.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Garpetian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes, and those were motions 8B1 and 2. Let's move on to 8C, please.
8C, General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding proposed bifurcation of existing 25-year renewable power purchase agreement with Skylar Resources, LP. Skylar novation of first 4 years of said agreement from Skylar to Morgan Stanley Capital Group, Incorporated. Resolution dispensing with competitive bidding and authorizing the City of Glendale to execute a letter agreement with Skylar pertaining to the proposed procurement, design, and installation of a 2-megawatt battery storage system in the City of Glendale, and to negotiate an agreement with Skylar for engineering, procurement, and installation of said 2 MW battery storage systems, and finding that such action is exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act. 8C1, motion authorizing the city manager to execute 2 amended and restated renewable energy transaction confirmation agreements with Skylar to bifurcate an existing 25-year renewable energy transaction confirmation into 1, a 4-year transaction, and 2, a 21-year transaction. 8C2, motion authorizing the city manager to execute a novation agreement novating the 4-year amended and restated renewable energy transaction confirmation agreement from Skylar to Morgan Stanley Capital Group, LP. 8C3, resolution dispensing with competitive bidding and authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute a letter agreement with Skylar and to negotiate and execute a contract with Skylar for the procurement, design, and installation of 2 MW of solar battery storage in the city of Glendale, and finding that such action is exempt under the requirement of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Okay, Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, that's an awfully long title, and it actually sums up quite well what we are asking to do. As you know, we have a 25-year renewable energy purchase agreement with Skylar. This actually helps GWP advance towards its goals on renewable energy under our RPS. At this point, however, Skylar is asking if we would bifurcate that existing 25-year agreement that's already been approved into 2 pieces, a 4-year piece and then a 21-year piece for the total of 25. That's the first item. The second item would be to basically assign the 4-year piece to a capital partner, being the Morgan Stanley Capital Group, and in consideration of this accommodation to them, they would allow GWP at Skylar's expense to experiment with a 2-megawatt battery system that would be located at Grayson Power Plant as we venture further into energy storage technologies to the extent that we can perfect our knowledge and experience on somebody else's dime, so much the better. At least that's our recommendation to you. Those are the 3 items. It's probably worth noting, too, that Skylar is willing to back up their commitment on the battery system with a $1.5 million deposit of cash that as time goes on and as they perform, we would release back to them as security. So if you have specific questions, or if I left anything out, Steve, we surely would be happy to answer that for council.
The only clarification, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, is actually we're going to install the battery backup at the Grandview, the remodeled Grandview substation. That's okay. I get those mixed up myself. We have the facility there, and it'll give us the opportunity to manage and experiment and learn not only what the battery storage can do for us, but how to manage it as well, because it is very, as you know, it's very much in its infancy, and this is an opportunity that we think is a great one for us.
Okay. Ms. Devine?
I had questions about this agreement, and I wanted to make sure that it was a neutral agreement, that it wouldn't cost our residents any extra money, or our citizens, or our council, our city, any extra. And through my conversations with Mr. Zern, I found out that this is indeed an act of faith, or a gift of faith, good faith. So they will be giving us $1.5 million or this battery system because we are going through this change. However, the most exciting part that I found was the fact that we can launch into this battery system. And I just was hearing on the news, or reading it in the paper, I can't remember, that Irvine Realty in Irvine is going to be using battery systems in their buildings. And so I checked with Mr. Zern, and you mentioned that El Centro is also using this. Can you explain to the residents?
A recent visit that we made to Imperial Irrigation District in El Centro to their power facility, actually to take a look at equipment that could be part of our repowering. They shared with us their battery program that they are just breaking ground on. They are going to utilize their battery backup as a way to bring down some of the burden on the plant. So as you can imagine, El Centro is a much hotter climate than we're in, and when that plant is operating at its peak, it is working hard. So they're going to be able to use these batteries to help pull down some of the operating wear and tear on the equipment, and use the batteries during those very peak periods. In our case, we're going to use what we're proposing to use our battery storage is to offset some of the very costs that you just approved in the LA agreements. And so that, especially with the balancing authority, we're going to be able to use that battery backup to offset some of those fees that we would normally pay them. And also, again, I think it's important to mention, to repeat, to get our experience with these battery systems, because then we can put something in at the Grayson Power Plant to help us with that operation. Or we can begin to look in cooperation with Mr. Galani and at buildings, as you mentioned. So it's the tip of the iceberg, I think, with regards to the technology, and I'm glad we have an opportunity to get into it early.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian, Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes, and that was, for the record, 8C, the motions at 8C1 and 2, and the resolution at 8C3. Let's move to 8D, please.
Mr. Mayor and Council, 8D is Director of Library Arts and Culture regarding Arts and Culture Work Plan. D1 is a review and approve the Arts and Culture Work Plan as recommended by the Arts and Culture Commission. D2 is a resolution appropriating $380,000 from the Urban Art Fund to contractual services.
Okay, Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. We are very pleased to present this item to you. As you know, one of the City Council's priorities is in the area of arts and culture and making Glendale an art hub and advancing our offerings to our residents through this art program, which revolves around a fee or the disposition of artworks respective to the value of given projects in certain zones. And so periodically, based on the council's direction to the Arts and Culture Commission, they put together a work program. That work program ultimately has to be blessed by this body, and we are here to recommend to you the 3-year work program. So with that, Director of Library Arts and Culture, Cindy Cleary, will give you a very brief presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, members of council. I'm happy to be here tonight to present the Commission's recommendations for the 15-17 work plan. First off, the work plan under the purview of the Commission supports the arts and culture as one of the priorities of the City Council as laid out in your vision. A quick review of where we are. In December 2010, the Urban Art Program and Fund Ordinance was adopted by Council, and this required that new development contribute 2% of the project value to on-site public art or 1% in lieu contribution to the Urban Art Fund. The Arts and Culture Commission is designated as the advisory to City Council for appropriations of the Urban Art Fund. Currently, the balance in the Urban Art Fund is $4.5 million, and expenditures to date are a little under $200,000. Then in February of 2013, Council approved a 5-year arts and cultural plan. And this was a broad stroke vision for the arts in Glendale in order to raise the visibility of arts and culture in our city. In September of the same year, Council approved a 2013-15 arts and culture work plan, which I'll talk about a little later. And this was based on the goals of the cultural arts plan, a very broad-based plan, and as recommended by the Arts and Culture Commission. Over the course of several meetings, the Arts and Culture Commission has been meeting, and what we're here today to present to you is their recommendations for the 15-16 and 16-17 work plans. At the heart of the work plan, and I think the most important thing that we want to accomplish, especially this year, is a public art master plan. A public art master plan will ensure responsible stewardship of the Urban Art Fund, will build on Glendale's Arts and Cultural Plan and Urban Art Program guidelines, will align with other city planning strategies, provide a catalyst for public engagement and identify deficits, and recommend long-term strategies. The Commission will develop and recommend to Council the scope of work for inclusion in an RFP to hire or engage an arts professional to develop the Public Art Master Plan, and it is anticipated that we complete the plan in this fiscal year. The proposed budget is $50,000. The next item that we want to include in the work plan is continuation of the very successful Performing Arts series, which this year, or the last 2 years, was at the Brand Library and Arts Center. And if you approve it, we would like to continue it over the next 2 years, not only at Brand Library, but at other venues throughout the city. And the proposed budget for that is $50,000, $25,000 over the 2-year process. The utility box mural program is another very successful program. Beyond the box, we would like to expand to other neighborhoods in the city, and that proposed budget is $25,000 over each of the 2 years. And Library Arts and Culture staff will continue to manage that program. This past year, we also had Art and Vacant Storefront program. We'd like to expand that to include pop-up arts, so experiential arts, storytelling, music, dance, digital arts, living arts, something that can activate our pedestrian byways. And the proposed budget for that is $50,000. We've just completed the Temporary Art in Public Spaces You Are Here program that was managed by AFTA Productions. This program included, and I'm sure many of you saw it, the Glendale Picnic, which is in Central Park, the Rotating Wings by Colette Miller, which you see on the left, that was traveled throughout the city and will be at City Hall in December, the Yarn Bombing at the Alex Theater, and the Labyrinth, which is out on Parcher Plaza at the moment. The recommendation is to review and determine the scope of this program through the master plan, and a very preliminary budget. This is a placeholder budget for 16-17 is $100,000, but the recommendation for this program and the budget will be brought back to council as part of an RFP process. The Commission is also recommending that we develop a long-term strategy for acquisition of public art to be considered and developed as part of the Public Art Master Plan strategy. This is presented tonight as a priority of the Commission, and no budget is proposed at this time. A mural and public art program is also another priority that will depend on the recommendation of the Public Art Master Plan. As envisioned, the program will integrate public murals on city-owned properties with the intent of engaging pedestrian activity. City gateways and medians can also be activated as part of this and the public art program. We will propose a budget at a later date based on the recommendations of the Public Art Master Plan. Finally, a couple other items. Capital outlay budget will support city and city-owned venues or spaces to accommodate arts programming sponsored by the city and the Commission, and that we may not expend that amount of money, but what we're proposing is $20,000 each year. Then maintenance and conservation for city or commission-sponsored artwork, $10,000. We've found with the utility box programs there's a need there, and some of our other programs there is a need for obviously maintenance and conservation. And finally, once the Public Art Master Plan is completed, a branded identity for the Commission that represents the city's investments in the art will be developed, and that cost is proposed at $20,000. So our next steps, what we're asking for, obviously, is your approval for the Arts and Culture Work Plan with a total appropriation of $380,000 from the Urban Art Fund. $145,000 of that would be in 15-16 and $235,000 in 16-17. In 15-16, as I said, at the heart of this proposal is the development of a public art master plan. And I truly believe that is essential for us to move forward and be good stewards of the Urban Art Fund and continuance of existing programming. And in 16-17, start implementing some of the recommendations of the Public Art Master Plan, as well as continue some of our existing programming. So with that, I ask if you have questions. We do have some commissioners with us tonight. Co-chair Harar Sharakian is with us, Shant Sahakian and Terry Deaver are here tonight, so if you have any questions for them, they are available.
Hey, Ms. Friedman.
Well, first, I'm really glad to see this come forward. I feel like in the last several years, the Arts and Culture Commission has really elevated their work, elevated their game, and really come up with a master plan that's comprehensive and holistic and something that looks at lots of different areas and avenues to bring arts into the civic discourse in a lot of different ways. And I think that the programs that they've been involved in over the last few years have been extremely successful. So I want to congratulate them and thank them for their hard work. I definitely support the plan. I think it sounds very, very good. I do hope that you continue to think about ways that things that we do, kind of everyday business of the city, can incorporate the arts, whether it's signage programs, using city buildings for art displays, doing art in unexpected ways on city vehicles, on city buses, I'm sure you've thought of all those things. And I would just say, don't necessarily limit yourself to this. If you have an idea like that and it's not been budgeted for the year, I'd still like to hear about it and have the opportunity to find a way of incorporating it, maybe not through the arts budget, but if it's a bus project, maybe through the transportation budget or public works or other, grant funds that we get through the city, and you be creative on your end and let us try to be creative on our end with the financing side. I hope that you continue to push the envelope and think of all sorts of new ways of bringing the arts into Glendale. It's one of my top priorities, absolutely, and I'm so happy to see you are all working on that every single day. And I would also encourage the public, as members of the public have these ideas, to bring them forward to the Arts Commission. They have a public comments period just the way council does, and people can certainly go in front of them and say, hey, I've got this great idea for this, that, or the other thing. And I know that they will be receptive and give it a fair shake and listen to that. So thank you, Cindy, and to your department. I think moving this into your department was a very a good thing to do, and I think it really fits in with the mission of the libraries, and I know that you are serving this very well, so thanks.
And if I may say, that part of the public art master plan process will be to engage not only you, but community stakeholders so that all those ideas can come forth and we can incorporate them in the future.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Sinan.
Thank you. So to pick up on that, how do we determine who the community stakeholders are? My main concern is, I don't want the council to sort of put a chokehold on the commission or on our staff and let you work, let you do your thing. But at the same time, I do want to make sure that we concentrate on local artists and local art. We are so blessed with a wealth of art on every corner. I mean, Glendale has artists and art everywhere. You don't have to even go looking for it. So are we making sure that when we go through the temporary art portion of our plan or the acquisition of public art, we make sure that we accentuate local art first? And I don't want, we shouldn't be exclusive. I'm not saying exclusively local art, but certainly the center of gravity has to be local.
And I think, the majority of programs, all the programs to date have been focused on the majority of people being from Glendale, the artists being from Glendale. But once again, that's going to be something where we will actively engage the Glendale community in the process of putting together a strategic plan. And the value of that is immeasurable.
Okay, and we look forward to seeing the results. I do have a question for staff. Do we have an ETA on this Neon Art Museum? Is it going to open anytime soon?
My understanding is that they will be open before the end of the calendar year. That is what we are advised.
But no, we have a month left, so we don't.
We do have a month left, and our hope and expectation that the Paseo is done, we'll be able to cut the ribbon on the Paseo and Mona.
Okay, look forward to that too. Thank you.
Ms. Devine?
Yes. I reiterate Councilmember Friedman's commending you and the commission on the work that you've been doing in the last few years. It's been fabulous, and I love the boxes and everything that how you brought this to the community. Two things. The other is I want to thank Councilmember Sinanian too, because that was one of my priorities, was the fact that you highlight local artists, because I am with him 100%. I understand there are a lot of artists here in our community that either don't know how to get their artwork out there, how the application system works, or how they can get it into these pop-up exhibits that you do. And I hope that your outreach will get to them somehow so that we can take advantage of our local artists. I love the idea of the murals. When traveling around the world and in Armenia, and I even had a slide when I showed Armenia, and they had in the alleyways the murals, and we have one here at Panera, and they're just delightful, and I really enjoy those. So I'm glad that that's part of the program, and I'm also really hoping that you do more in permanent artwork, and I'm also going to push for our Oshagans eyewitness to please make sure that that's on the agenda to be in this community in its entirety somewhere along the line. My only question is, it seems like there's a master plan for the master plan, because Exhibit 2 seems to be a master plan. So my question is, what exactly is this consultant going to be doing besides what you have listed on this?
Yeah, the arts and cultural plan is very broad strokes. So it basically says we want to raise the visibility of the arts in Glendale without real specifics. So the public art master plan will look at the specifics. They'll look at a funding strategy. How do we long-term take advantage of the Urban Art Fund? They'll look at specific programs and the best way to implement those programs. They'll do inventory. I mean, this is all to be determined when we go through development of the RFP process, and these are some of the things they can do. They can do an inventory of existing public art in the city. They can help us figure out how to find that, unmined talent that's out there that we haven't been able to reach. So it's basically putting together real specific strategies for how we move forward with the programming, and also help us think about what kind of programming we want to do. Because right now we're very small scale. We've only expended $200,000, and I think we need to think bigger. And by getting community engaged in the discussion, I think that will help get us to where we need to be. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion then?
Move the item.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Garpetian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Thank you. Let's move on to the next item of business.
Mr. Mayor, as item 9A has been taken off the agenda, the next item is oral communication. This is the 5-minute portion. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. And City Manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for an investigation and report.
Okay. Before we get to the public portion, Mr. Sinanian has.
Quick announcement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we were supposed to do this during council comments, but December 2nd, which is a Wednesday evening at 6 p.m., our City Hall, we're going to host the holiday tree lighting ceremony. So anyone who wants to have a good time and get into the holiday cheer, please come by and bring your kids and grandkids, and just bring yourself. And every year it's been a lot of fun since we brought it back in 2013. Last year the rains preempted the Christmas tree lighting. Otherwise, the tree turned out to be beautiful. I'm sure it's going to be just as beautiful this year. So, December 2nd at 6 p.m. That's a Wednesday evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. First speaker is Mike Mohill.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mike Mohill. Mistrust, misplaced trust. In 1999, one of the most irresponsible political acts occurred when the California Public Employees Retirement System, CalPERS, convinced our state legislatures that generous salary and pension increases for state union workers could be financed from investment earnings and have no effect on the taxpayers' wallets. CalPERS actuaries were manipulated and full of holes, but the union-dominated board adopted the most optimistic scenario, and it was sold to the state legislature and the governor. Excuse me. Cities that belonged to CalPERS after 30 years of service saw their fire and police personnel receive 90% of their last year's salary at age 50 as their pension for life. Management, 75%. And general employees, 60%. CalPERS also convinced our politicians to have the taxpayers guarantee 7.75% return on their investments. Just a few years ago, CalPERS reduced the return 0.25%. All the rosy predictions came to a screeching end with the Great Recession. Council, like always, did Band-Aid fixes by raising fees and creating new fees on the taxpayers to pay for the failed investments of CalPERS. The 90%, 75%, 60% pension structure was never adjusted back to pre-1999. About 16 years ago, 30% of the general fund paid for the salary and pension benefits of Glendale police and fire departments. Today, 80% is required. Because of failed investments, CalPERS today is planning to put a greater burden on struggling families with increases in fees and taxes to pay even more of the generous CalPERS union employees' salary and pension benefits. P.S. In an article dated November 1, 2015, in the LA Daily News, while the median private employer's contribution 3% of pay toward their employees' retirement accounts, Glendale taxpayers will spend a whopping 30 cents per dollar to pay CalPERS this year. PPS, Los Angeles Times article dated October 23, 2015. CalPERS pension plan was only 74% funded at the end of June 2015. In July, the overall fund reported returns of just 2.4% for its fiscal year, which ended June 30, far below its projected 7.5% investment target, and places every Glendale citizen on the hook for their failed investments. For months, our city council was advised that the bankrupt cities of San Bernardino, Santa Ana, and others who belonged to CalPERS had one common thread. These welfare cities possess millions of dollars of unfunded Cadillac Post employees' medical insurance. In Glendale, the unfunded debt obligation grew from $103 million in 2009 to about $250 million fiscal year 2015, and still growing. Because of public pressure and a new government standard edict, our current council react to the unfunded medical insurance debt, and over the strong objections of our union workforce, did council unanimously vote to cancel this out-of-control employee benefit. Ladies and gentlemen, please contact our council members and inform them that you are tired of going without in order that our CalPERS union workforce can live in a grand style denied to you. Council members who have received endorsements and campaign contribution from our government union sit on council and protect the interests of our firefighters, police officers, city management, and general employees. Time for Glendale citizens to bite the bullet and pay CalPERS $1.4 billion of blood money and be rid of this irresponsible and corrupt pension benefit system. It will not be easy, folks. Otherwise, we and our children will continue to be indebted to CalPERS for years to come. God save the Queen. In this case, God save Glendale citizens. Thank you. My name is Mike Mohill.
Thank you. Next speaker is Abdul Reza Safari. Mr. or Ms. Safari. Last is Herbert Milano.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council. My name is Herbert Milano. I'm a resident of Glendale. It's been almost 30 years since I bought property in Glendale. I kept the same property ever since. And a couple of weeks ago, I came before you to at least try to present an issue that has been in my mind for a very long time, and I have come to City Council repeatedly in at least the last 12 years, with regard to road conditions and road maintenance. I mentioned 2 weeks ago that it appears from the CAFR in the statistical section in the back where you find the number of miles of road repair reported, that we tend to reconstruct less than a mile per year. Reconstruction means you cut off about 3 inches of the road and strip it and put new asphalt. There's also a maintenance, like slurry seal, that is done temporarily to maintain it. So if you look at the last 10 years since the report appears on the statistical section, it's roughly about 3 miles per year. So I did some research with regard to what is the length of the lifespan of a road, and it's about 20 years. 24 if the conditions are good, like in Southern California, but generally it's about 20 years in California. It's less in other parts of the country where there's salt and cold and the weather temperatures are more severe. But if you take 350 miles of roads as described in the statistical section and a 20-year lifespan, you need to repair at least 70 miles of road every year. But you reconstruct only 1. So it's been my contention that the Public Works Department has been underfunded when it comes to the budget process. And it is my recommendation that as you receive these financial reports every quarter, you do have the option of coming back and review your budget and reassign monies to where it is needed. I also mentioned 2 weeks ago that I wanted to invite council members to work with me on some of the areas that really need focus. Jackson and Duran will be a good example. California and Louise is another example. Just a few of the intersections that show the dramatic deterioration of these roadways. There are some roads in this area north of Broadway and south of the 134 freeway, from Brand Boulevard to Glendale Avenue, that have been repaired. I mean, right next door on Isabel, in front of the police department, you'll see a road condition that is what roads conditions should be. It's pristine, it's in good condition, it's been around for about 5 years. But the roads, like from California, from Kenwood to Brand, awful. Louise, north of Broadway, it's in terrible condition. And the alleys, not to say, the alley behind my building hasn't been repaired in at least 50 years. And so as the rain comes, it really creates a significant problem, I think, with the additional potholes and the cracks and so forth. But if we were just to add the deferred maintenance and construction in the last 10 years, you have about $100 million worth of repairs. Cost of a mile of a lane mile is about $200,000. So it's about $800,000 a mile. So for all of Glendale, you do have a significant deficit with regard to road repair. My contention is that the budget process doesn't address first all the deferred maintenance that the city has accumulated. In 2007, we had a report, very extensive report on Glendale Water and Power, for example, $300 million in deferred maintenance on the sewers and the water mains. So one of the reasons why the roads were not repaired is because Public Works said that they needed to wait until the water mains were fixed so they don't have to do double construction. But when are the water mains going to be corrected? So it is my contention that the city should really take on a review of the budget, take a first-hand look at these roads. It's really embarrassing to have people come from other parts of the country, come to supposedly this jewel city, and see these incredibly bad road conditions. I hope it is not a contentious issue. I wrote to all of you concerning other issues that I don't want to bring up here, but it is something that you can see beforehand, see it yourself, and I can guide you to some of the areas that really have not been touched in decades. So it is my hope that you will pay attention and perhaps bring up the budget process again and review it, since you can adjust it every quarter and make a recognition of this deficit that we have in this postponed infrastructure need. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Sinania.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Ochoa, if you could address this issue, because I have to say, I'm concerned with the way this is being presented. At the same time, it's being, it sounds like sort of the mud-struck roads of rural Russia of 18th century. How bad is it? And address
no,
these
absolutely.
issues,
I'll certainly advise council that we do have a need to increase funding in our street repair. Later, either this year or early January, you'll get the regular report from Mr. Golani that talks about our pavement index. I would submit to you that we aren't where we want to be right now, but we certainly are not in a situation, I think the term used last time the gentleman was here was third world country. Unless the definition of third world country is somewhat different than what other folks might utilize. We need to put marginally more money into street resurfacing in order to maintain our index, and I would submit to you that we utilize the pavement management index to help ensure that we are rotating our street resurfacing and reslurrying activity around the city in a way that is prioritized based on need. So do we have issues? Do we need to spend more? Yes. Are we in the dire condition? At least I'm not aware of it. When Mr. Milano had forwarded his email, I sent it off to the Public Works Director, Mr. Galanian. He will reach out to Mr. Milano and share some information with him. But certainly, we have work to do. I would submit to you it's not nearly what's being described here. But as was evidenced previously tonight, as we exit the Great Recession, as the good work of the council has freed up additional dollars going forward, we would advise that those dollars go back into infrastructure replacement.
Okay. And this plan that Mr. Golanian is going to bring back is sort of a comprehensive picture of what needs to be fixed, where, and when we project to do that.
Effectively, yes. It is an overview, an index of the composite condition of our roadways. Okay. And so we try to hold at a certain standard such that when you leave the city of Glendale to the fair city of Burbank and even city of LA, you know you left Glendale, and vice versa. You know you came back, if only because of the smoothness of those roads.
And when is the ETA on this?
I think that comes back to early January or late December. Is that right, Rubik?
The plan is to come back on December 15th.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I would just, before we go to new business, I would just like to report that that I did miss today's earlier meetings at the Housing Authority and closed session, and I was late to this meeting. I spent the day in Sacramento with the mayors of La Cañada, Sierra Madre, Pasadena, and South Pasadena, where we discussed the 710 tunnel issues, and it was a very productive meeting with members of the Brown administration. So, is there any new business? Ms. Devine?
Okay. I would like to move that the city attorney be and hereby is authorized to enter into a retainer agreement with the law firm of Gibbs, Giddon, Loker, Turner, Sennett, and Withbrought, LLP, to provide legal services for the city of Glendale with respect to a matter and to incur all necessary expenses in connection therewith. The agreement shall, in addition to other provisions, contain a fee cap and an estimated budget for the handling of said matter.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Council members Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Garpetian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Abstain.
And I would like to move that the city attorney be and hereby is authorized to enter into a legal services agreement with the law firm of Blaisdell Church and Johnson, LLC, to provide a legal opinion under Utah law for the city of Glendale and to incur all necessary expenses in connection therewith. The agreement shall, in addition to other provisions, contain a fee cap and an estimated budget for the handling of said matter.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Garpetian? Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Abstain. And we will, upon proper motion, we will adjourn tonight's meeting in the memory of Dr. John J. Jackson.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.